Ahoy, and welcome to Q&A Friday. Are you glad it's Friday? I'm usually not, one of those people who's like, I'm just waiting for Friday because it's the weekend. I've told you guys that I love to be in here and I love to work, but I think I am ready for this Friday. This week has been a really busy week for me. So, yeah, I'm ready for it. Get a little recharge and get back in here on Monday to rock and roll. But welcome to the Voiceover Huddle. My name is Mike Hathcote. We are here every single weekday morning just to give you a little bit of a tip to help grow your voiceover business. I'm a professional voice actor and voiceover coach, author of the book The Voiceover Blueprint, which you can pick up for less than $10 in the description below. You'll get the download of the audio version and the digital copy. So check that out. Also, don't forget to chime in on the chat. We're going to answer some questions and do some shout outs here in a few minutes. So do that. And then, of course, always like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share. If you find this content useful, certainly would appreciate that. So while we're waiting on some questions to pop in, I've got a little story I want to tell you. And this is pretty interesting. And I felt kind of proud when this happened. I got an email from one of my agents, and they normally would do a blind carbon copy because they send out the auditions to everyone on their roster. If they fit the specs of this particular spot, they normally will do a BCC so that you can't see who all else they've sent that email to or that audition opportunity to. But this time, for some reason, they forgot to do that, and they just copied everyone, and you could see everybody that they'd sent it to. And just out of curiosity, I just decided to kind of see who all was on the chain there. And I was surprised to find several, I mean, like 5 or 6 different people who had come out of the blueprint, and who I had coached personally that were on the list of this same agent. So I thought that was a pretty cool little sign that apparently what I'm teaching works. So, I thought that was kinda neat to just see. I was like, "Oh, I know that person. Oh, I know that person. Oh, I know that person." And, I don't who knows who got that job, that particular job, but it was kind of a cool experience to see, lots of people who I've come across and have worked with and have now risen to that level of being on, a pretty prestigious, agency roster. So, pretty cool stuff because what they don't just take everybody, obviously. They vet you, they listen to your demos, they make sure that you're, professional at what you do, and which is all the more reason why you should have good quality demos so that you can go and apply to those rosters. But, yeah, I was pretty impressed with that. So, anyway, a little short story there for you. Okay, let's see who's in today and answer some questions since it is Q&A Friday. There's Sean from Longview, first one in today, TGIF, ding, ding, ding. And there's Mark from Montreal. There's Terry from Fallston, Maryland. Terry asks, are acting lessons good for voiceover? Yes. I personally have not taken any, but I know plenty of people who have, whether it be, improv classes or just straight up acting classes. Um, and they have found it very beneficial to their reads and, being able to get more work. So yes, if you're thinking about going into acting lessons for voiceover, then by all means do that. There's Kirsten from Georgia. She says aloha and aloha to you. There's Edward from Jacksonville, Florida, and Jim from Memphis. There's Wayne from Port Orchard. Jim says, what do you think of a recording range of -12 to -18 with a peak at -6? That's fine. That's kind of where you want to be when you're recording at your normal speaking voice. You want to be kind of roughly in the range of anywhere between yeah, but I mean 12 and 18 might be just a little low. I usually say between 6 and 9, but that's still okay because what you're going to end up doing is doing a final normalization to -3, not -6. Um, I mean, if you peak at -6, that's fine before you've normalized, but when you normalize, kind of the standard, you know, operating procedure for most files should be at that -3 range. That's what I normalize every single one of my files at as my final step in my, um, processing process. I normalize to -3, and that's what I send it off to the client at. But as long as you're peaking anywhere between 6, 9, and 12, I mean, that it's all kind of a range. But, yeah, that sounds fine to me. Sandra says, well, she doesn't say anything. She says, Worthington, Ohio. So hello, Sandra from Worthington, Ohio. And there's Callie from Pasco, Washington. Good morning to you. There's JJ. She says, have a great weekend, Mike and all. Thank you, JJ. JJ says, you're a great coach, Mike. Great sense of humor, too. Well, thank you. I guess dad jokes are in vogue these days. So appreciate that, JJ. Appreciate it. Tracy says, good morning from Rochester, Minnesota. And there's Lynette from lovely Sparks, Nevada. And good morning, Andrew from Latvia. There's Nancy in Yankton, South Dakota. Gretchen from Indianapolis just joined the VO Blueprint. So excited to get started. Thank you so much for doing that, Gretchen. And I'll see you on the inside, as they say, on all the webinars and all the live, the live streams and the Facebook group and stuff. So can't wait to work with you. Jim says normalizing to -3 is the next step before saving the file. Yep, that's the last step for me. I do normalize as my very last step before I save the file and send it off. There's Maria from Rhode Island. She says, I just joined the Blueprint too and cannot wait to get started. Well, thank you too, Maria. I believe you will be glad you did. So, like I said, I'll see you on the inside as well. Harold says, I can't wait to get the Audacity software to import music beds for voiceover. Um, well, you don't necessarily need Audacity. Well, any DAW will do that. You can import music into any recording software to add music and everything, music and effects. You don't have to just have Audacity. I mean, Audacity is free and, pretty bare bones and easy to use. So if that's what you want to start with, go for it. Clint says, happy Friday from Chandler. Last day of high school for my senior. Wishing all grads well in their future endeavors. Well, thank you, Clint. Yes, mine has got about a week to go. She's at McClintock, and she will be finishing up here in about a week. So she's super stoked. She'll be going to ASU in the fall. Charlie says, good morning from Sparta, Wisconsin. What goes into a demo for audiobooks? Probably a stupid question. Charlie, there are no stupid questions on this channel. No such thing as a stupid question. Any question is welcome. So, when it comes to an audiobook demo, and I'm not a big audiobook guy, but I do know what goes into those demos. So, what I would do if I were you is have multiple reading styles on the same demo. And an audiobook demo is typically a little longer than, say, a commercial demo, because you gotta fit a lot of content in to that demo. So what I would do is I would pick like a fiction read, where you're doing some character work, maybe a nonfiction read, which is more straightforward and, first person kind of thing. Um, and just mix up the different styles. Maybe do you know, a a very serious nonfiction book, and then maybe a more lighthearted nonfiction book, maybe like a self-help or something like that, maybe a biography. And then when it comes to the fiction books, make sure if you want to do this, by the way, I mean, I'm not saying you absolutely have to have a fiction spot on your demo. Mine don't, because I'll be honest, I'm not good at that. I'm not good at at separating dialogue between characters and stuff. If I'm my own character, I can do that, but when you're having 2 people talk to each other, I'm not great at that, but some people are fantastic at it. So, a couple of examples of that kind of thing, and you wanna have your demo to be under 2 minutes. People will probably be able to decide whether or not you're what they wanna work with or who they wanna work with within that 2-minute range. But I would also just hop onto a site like ACX and listen to other people's demos, especially the ones who you see are doing a lot of recording, that have a lot of books recorded out there. Look at their profiles, listen to their demos, and try to mimic, what they've done on theirs because it's obviously working for them. So give that a try. Callie says, can you give advice on editing dialogue from a film for a demo? Meaning, how long of a clip? And do you only include your own dialogue when it's 2 people having a back and forth conversation? Interesting. That's a really good question, Callie. Um, I actually have on my medical demo, I have a conversation of myself being the doctor and someone else being a patient, a female being a patient. So it's totally okay to do that because that does make it sound more real. And if you go to my website, you'll see on my medical demo, if you play it, there's a spot in there where I'm talking about, I'm like, well, it looks like the medication's working for you and blah, blah, blah. And the customer, well, let's face it, we're customers when it comes to the medical field. But anyway, the patient is like, well, I still feel okay and blah, blah, blah. And so there is a back and forth dialogue. So it's totally fine to do that on a demo. In fact, it kind of shows and gives you a little bit more legitimacy because it does sound like a real spot that was out there in the wild somewhere. So yeah, go for it. Do that. That's totally fine. Jim says in audiobooks, an average demo should run 3 to 3.5 minutes. I don't know. I mean, you may want to check that. Like I said, check others who are doing well and see how long theirs are. That seems a bit long to me, but like I said, I'm not a big audiobook guy. Um, so that's why I always say, look at the ones who are. Random Gal on TV says, I noticed when I'm watching audio editing, almost every other step is normalize. What is it used for? Is it really necessary? Well, I don't know about every other step, but one step for sure is something you should do. Normalizing basically brings the average volume up across the entire file, so you don't have a lot of big ups and downs in range. Now, it'll take, and this is getting into the weeds a little bit on the technical aspect of this, but it'll take what normalizing does is it takes the highest peak of your audio file, wherever that highest peak is. I don't care if it's a 30-second read or a 3-minute read. It's going to take the very highest peak in your waveform, and it's going to take that peak up to -3 or whatever you're normalizing to. Uh, for instance, when we do a demo, we usually normalize it to -1 just because demos are a little different, but just delivering a daily job, it'll take it up to -3, and then it brings everything else up in relation to that, right? So if it takes the highest peak up, it's gonna take everything else up in relation to that highest peak. So it doesn't take everything up to -3 because then it would just be a big mess. So it takes the highest peak to -3, and then everything else kind of goes up with that in relation to that highest peak. It's a little, like I said, it's a little in the weeds, but it is necessary because it just kind of evens everything out and makes everything kind of what's the word? Um, mm, just an even, well, normalize is the word, really. I mean, it evens everything out is the best I can explain it. There's JR from Austin, Texas. Happy Friday to you, sir. I assume you're a sir. Sorry if you're not. Apologies. Doug says, greetings from Greensboro, North Carolina. Callie says, okay, thank you. That's very helpful. Cool. Glad it helped. There's Mark, first time caller. Are agents still a good source of work? I'm making good income with my own marketing, but would like to move up more national opportunities. Thoughts? Oh, yes. In fact, I've got plans on doing a whole topic on agents, but we'll talk about it today. The old paradigm used to be you have to have an agent to get work, multiple agents to get work. And you basically just had to sit by the phone, wait for them to, go out and hawk your stuff and then, get the notification that, hey, you got an opportunity. Well, that's gone. These days, just like you said, with your own marketing, that is where you're going to find most of your work these days. It's all on you. So the days of relying on an agent are gone. However, I'm a big fan of diversification, meaning keep doing your marketing, hustle, get the marketing going, but also get agents, multiple agents if you can. I have 5 agents. And yes, agents will supply those higher level opportunities, the national spots and, the big money jobs. Um, so yes, by all means, get an agent or 2 or 6 or 7, just make sure they're not competing markets. But yes, go after the agents, use those as one spoke in your marketing wheel. Don't rely on them or else you're going to starve. If I had to rely on my agents to get work, I would starve. So, but it is a good channel to get work. The idea in this game is to maximize the amount of ways that you get audition opportunities or job opportunities. A lot of my work is it's not audition, it's like repeat business where they're like, they already know that they want to use me and they just send me the jobs. That's probably the most of the work that I get. A lot of the other jobs that I get are audition opportunities, whether it be from rosters or agents or wherever, pay to plays. That would be another. And then another channel would be platforms like, Fiverr, Upwork, those kind of places. But anyway, the idea is to diversify as many ways to get opportunities. And yes, agents are one of those ways. So do it. Doug says, what software do you use for dubbing a video commercial? Well, dubbing a video commercial is kind of a, you know, misnomer, I guess there, but um, I use Final Cut Pro when I'm doing video work. That is my main video editing software. Um, I typically don't do it for commercials because I'm a voice talent. So I usually just provide the voice for the commercials and let the production house do the video aspect of it. But if I'm doing something sort of, like a video demo for someone or myself or, um, something like that, then the software that I use is Final Cut Pro, which is an Apple product. It's very similar to Premiere Pro for Adobe. Very similar, in fact. So, yeah. All right. Susan says, seeing that would be extremely satisfying. I'm not sure what you're referring to, Susan, but cool. Sorry. Bernie's Mountain Dog says, I'm just getting started in voiceover work, working on making my demos now, and was wondering if you had any advice as to what things to record. Okay. So if you're doing your own demo, which to get good work, I don't typically advise that, but to get started, yes, you can do a DIY demo. You're gonna be kind of playing small at that point when you're doing a DIY demo. In other words, you're not gonna go out and use that demo, or you shouldn't anyway. You shouldn't go out and use that demo for direct marketing. Just don't, because you're competing with people who have done professional demos at that point. But if you do wanna do your own demo, then here's how I'd go about it. Step 1, hop onto YouTube. And if you're doing a commercial demo, which most people start with a commercial demo, look for commercials on YouTube that have some sort of connection to you. If you drive a Honda Accord, look for some Honda Accord commercials or Honda commercials. If you like to wear Nike shoes, look for some Nike commercials, whatever it may be. Then transcribe those commercials and then try to replicate those on your own. And YouTube actually has a transcription feature where you can transcribe, copy and paste that, clean up the script, try to replicate it as best you can, and then try to add the music and sound effects on there as best you can. It's going to be a little tough, especially if you're brand new to it, but it will give you some practice. It will allow you to put some demos out there. But just remember, the cardinal sin and one of the biggest mistakes that new voiceover talent make is shopping around, direct marketing a DIY demo. Just don't do it. That's just an easy way to get super frustrated and burn a whole lot of bridges right out of the gate because you only get one chance to make that first impression. So it's fine for those lower tier jobs and the Fivers and Upworks and those kinds of things. But if you want to go out and start making a real go at this business, you got to have professional demos and a really good website for people to see them. So hopefully that helps. All right. What other questions we have? I've reached the bottom of the internets. Oh, you're welcome. Glad that helps. In fact, I've had people ask me, and this kind of goes back to their question. I've had people ask me when they should build their website. And to be honest, you don't really need your website until you start doing direct marketing. And you should not do direct marketing until you do your professional demo. So, ergo, no website until you get a professional demo. Okay. So, don't feel like you have to rush into building a website right now if you haven't gotten a pro demo yet, because it's just, you're not going to use it for anything. So wait to build your website until you get your professional demo or demos. And then you can start going out and knocking on those digital doors to get work. All right. Well, I've got a couple of radio imaging jobs that I typically don't do to do today. And then I've got a documentary that I've got to do as well. So I've got a busy day planned for the last day of the work week. So I'm going to get into it. But okay, wait, here we go. We got some more. Bernie's Mountain Dog says, right now I'm just starting on Fiverr to dip my toe in the water, so to speak. Yeah. And that's what most people do. That's where Fiverr works well. Um, What I would also do on Fiverr is I would go look at some of the top rated sellers to see kind of what they're doing and kind of copy their profiles, not word for word, but just, the way they've got their stuff laid out. Um, be your own person, but just kind of look at the style and the way they've built their profiles out to do your best on that. But once again, even on Fiverr, you're still competing against people who have professional demos. Um, but when you first jump onto Fiverr, you kind of have to start at the bottom of the, totem pole and work your way up. So don't be, I don't want to say don't be frustrated because it can be frustrating when you first start out on there. I mean, some people set their profile up and then it's months before they start getting any work. But that all goes back to your ability to create a good demo on your own. The better the demo, the better you're going to do, whether it's on Fiverr or direct, either way. All right, guys, I want you all to have a great weekend. Please do that for me. And I'll see you back here on Monday and we'll talk more voiceover. All right. See you next time.